What are we reading?
Wait, how are we reading the Cask of Amontillado?
The Cask. We're reading Cask of Amontillado. There was a poll I put in the chat that you could answer if you wanted to read one of the names, read one of the dialogue people. So it looks like Rob and Marat are down for either. Allison wants to be Fortunado. So
I'm down for either, but I have a distinct preference of being a weird clown that loves to drink.
Hi, Phoebe.
He's here.
Oh, yeah, Phoebe. Wait. We gotta be hoodie boys. Not hoodie, what are these called? Beanie boys.
Well, now you're just the beanie.
Oh, goddamn. I feel betrayed.
No. Oh no. Maybe I should.
I brought Amontillado sherry to the party.
Ooh, that's a good point. Allison's cast. Oh my gosh.
Cask in the cask.
Guys, this is great. This is a great episode. I don't know how we're gonna tie it in, but it's gonna happen.
Well, because Fortunato wears the silly hat.
Yeah, dude,
He's like a jingle jangle because of the masquerade.
Yeah, because he's a jingle jangle.
Oh, I don't have a nose.
He's a jingle jangle boy.
Colin, you look like a fisherman.
Nice.
Yeah.
What kind of fish you want?
You know, any of them. Remember that summer where you
This is so
officially a cult.
Except Rob.
Rob.
Where's your beanie, Rob? You must join us.
We can edit a beanie on him in post. It's fine.
He's working on it. He's working on it.
You know, I expected us, like our picture, to be all of us holding red wine, but all of us wearing beanies, I guess. This is some kind of winter special. Yeah.
This is quite cute, I must say.
Yeah. Midwinter. So, Allison, what's Amontillado taste like?
Well, if you've had sherry before, it tastes like sherry. It's fortified wine. So if you've had like sherry or tawny port or like Marsala wine or anything like that before, it's a little bit raisiny. Like if raisins were like an alcohol.
I don't want to start another war.
Yeah.
Would you say the Amontillado's to die for?
No. No, I prefer life.
Yes, beanies.
Can we make it?
Foreshadowing.
Yes.
Beanies. Rob's tried a few things. I think. Can you hear us now, Rob? Yes. At least that has happened. But I don't think we'll be able to hear Rob today.
No.
Maybe you can act it out.
Sign language.
We cannot act out the dialogue in a podcast format.
You are not.
Watch the video, dude.
Yeah,
I know.
gotta say.
We are a visual medium.
That's true.
Yes,
I guess we can just lean in.
Media.
Well, we will need someone to read. Rob can act however he wants, but I think Allison won Fortunado's position. Marat also wanted to be Montressor. Does anyone else challenge him on that position?
I'm
Really?
intimidated.
Does this guy suck?
I'm just kidding.
You do it. You can do it.
Marat is Montressor and Allison's Fortunato, and Rob will have the starring role in the next story we do, if his mic works then. So, Cask of Amontillado, back to Edgar Allan Poe. So here's the artwork of Fortunato in this book.
Oh, he does not look very Fortunato, bro.
But, well,
It's a bit unfortunato.
one of the main themes of the story is irony, naming him Fortunato. He is not fortunate. How ironic.
How ironic.
How ironic.
Oh, how ironic. Who
How
was the other
ironic.
guy? How ironic.
Montressor
Montressor.
or Montressor.
So this is
I looked
called
up the name of Montressor, and one site said, "My treasure," like Montressor. But another one said that it means, "No one provokes me without impunity."
We'll get to that. That's in the story.
That definitely. I see that.
All right. Not a lot of background info is needed for this one. We are in Italy. We're in Carnival, which is just like a big celebration. Things like the Venice masks and stuff. So everyone's dressed up in these costumes, kind of Halloween-esque, enjoying having a party, and a lot of people are blazing drunk. Montressor is a nobleman. He's lived in the city for a long time. His family is well established, quite rich, and he has a feud with this man called Fortunado. Fortunado did something to Montressor. We never actually find out what it is. Similar to the Telltale Heart, there's a lot of questions that we are left unanswered with. But he did something very bad, and Montressor is set on revenge. The Cask of Amontillado. The 1,000 injuries of Fortunado I had borne as best I could, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. You, who know so well the nature of my soul, will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat. At length, I would be avenged. This was a point definitely settled, but the very definitiveness with which it was resolved precluded the idea of risk. I must not only punish, but punish with impunity. Impunity means unpunishment or immunity. So I must not only punish, but punish and get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. It is equally unredressed when the avenger fails to make himself felt as such to him who has done the wrong. It must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunato cause to doubt my goodwill. I continued, as was my wont, to smile in his face, and he did not perceive that my smile now was at the thought of his immolation. He had a weak point, this Fortunato, although in other regards he was a man to be respected, and even feared. He prided himself on his connoisseurship in wine. Few Italians have the true virtuoso spirit. For the most part, their enthusiasm is adopted to suit the time and opportunity, to practice imposture upon the British and Austrian millionaires, which is in italics in my copy anyway, because at the time that was a French word, not an English word yet. Cool.
Right up.
In painting and gemmery, Fortunato, like his countrymen, was a quack. But in the matter of old wines, he was sincere.
Oh.
In this respect, I did not differ from him materially. I was skillful in the Italian vintages myself, and bought largely whenever I could. And we'll see that that's true. He has bought largely. He's got a large collection of wine.
Oh, a bit of a scientist myself.
It was about dusk one evening during the supreme madness of the Carnival season that I encountered my friend. He accosted me with excessive warmth, for he had been drinking much. The man wore motley. He had on a tight-fitting, party-striped dress, and his head was surmounted by the conical cap and bells. So that's like the jester cap with the bells. I was so pleased to see him that I thought I should never have done wringing his hand. I said to him,
My dear Fortunato, you are luckily mates. How remarkably well you are looking today. But I have received a pipe of what passes for Amontillado, and I have my doubts.
How?
To pause for a sec, a pipe would be 130 gallons of wine.
Oh.
So
I don't work for this, but
That's like the big, giant barrels, like the tequila barrels that they make hotels in.
Yeah, it would be gigantic. So his excitement about this is legit. It would be so much wine, so much incredibly good, special, expensive wine that he just can't even believe it. So how? Said he.
Amontillado? A pipe? Impossible. And in the middle of the carnival?
I have my doubts.
I replied.
And I was silly enough to pay the full Amontillado price without consulting you in the matter. You were not to be found, and I was fearful of losing a bargain.
Amontillado?
I have my doubts,
Amontillado?
and I must satisfy them.
Amontillado?
As you are engaged, I am on my way to Lucrezi. If anyone has a critical turn, it is he. He will tell me.
Lucrezi cannot tell Amontillado from Sherry.
And yet some fools will have it that his taste is a match for your own.
Come, let us go.
Whither?
To your vaults.
My friend, no. I will not impose upon your good nature. I perceive you have an engagement. Lucrezi.
I have no engagement. Come.
My friend, no. It is not the engagement, but the severe cold with which I perceive you're afflicted. Their vaults are insufferably damp. They are encrusted with nitre?
Let us go, nevertheless. The cold is merely nothing. Amontillado, you have been imposed upon. And as for Lucrezi, he cannot distinguish Sherry from Amontillado.
Wonderful. Good job. So this is Poe's turn at comedy, and I think he does a pretty decent job. So Fortunato's obviously quite drunk. He's just like trying to process this information and like get to the Amontillado as quickly as possible. What Montressor is doing is quite a bit of reverse psychology. So he's like, oh, no, I won't bother you. I'll go find Lucrezi. Like, he can do it probably even better than you can. And because Fortunato is so proud in his wine tasting abilities, he's like, no, like, not Lucrezi. I'll do it. Don't worry. So it's this pride and this greed, and he's feeding on those vices inside Fortunato. Nitre is potassium nitrate. It's used as a meat preservative and also in gunpowder. So it's like, think like asbestos or something like that. It's just like in the vaults. So he's like, oh no, I know that you're sick already. I don't want to make you more sick with the nitre. Okay. So in any case, Fortunato is convinced he needs this Amontillado. Thus speaking, Fortunato possessed himself of my arm. Putting on a mask of black silk and drawing a roquelaire closely about my person, I suffered him to hurry to my palazzo. So he puts on a black mask and a big black cloak, looking like, I don't know, death or some other obvious symbol, and brings Fortunato to his house.
I like that.
There were no attendants, meaning servants, at home. They had absconded to make merry in the honor of time. I had told them that I should not return into the morning and had given them explicit orders not to stir from the house. These orders were sufficient, I well knew, to ensure their immediate disappearance, once and all, as soon as my back was turned. So this is another like quick moment of reverse psychology. He told his servants, do not leave the house. I won't be back till morning. And then they all immediately left and went to Carnival. But he knew that was going to happen. So this is how he kind of gets stuff done. He uses reverse psychology to kind of like trick people into doing what he wants them to be doing.
You planned this all out pretty well.
I took from their sconces 2 flambeaux, which are like torches, and giving one to Fortunato, bowed him through several suites of rooms to the archway that led into the vaults. I passed down a long and winding staircase, requesting him to be cautious as he followed. We came at length to the foot of the descent, and stood together on the damp ground of the catacombs of the Montressors. So these catacombs are not only where he stores his wine, because it's nice and cool down here, it's also where he stores his ancestors' bones. They are all buried in the catacombs. If you've seen the French catacombs, I can put up some pictures here.
Skulls.
Yeah, there's skulls and bones and all kinds of creepy stuff. And it's damp. It's damp and cool down there, so it's actually really well suited to storing certain types of wine. Like you had to have a wine cellar today. So it's creepy, but understandable. It also points to Montressor's wealth, because only the wealthy families would be able to hold on to this over, decades and decades and generations and generations. Right, generations and generations under their estate. So they're going to go down and pass, literally, Montressor's grandparents, great-grandparents, cousins, uncles, whoever, down to where the Amontillado is hiding. The gait of my friend was unsteady, and the bells upon his cap jingled as he strode.
The pipe,
said he.
It is further on,
said I.
But observe the white webwork which gleams from these cavern walls.
He turned towards me and looked into my eyes with 2 filmy orbs that distilled the rheum of intoxication.
Niter?
He asked at length.
Neither.
I replied.
How long have you had that cough?
My poor friend found it impossible to reply for many minutes.
It is nothing.
He said at last.
Oh. Come.
I said with decision.
We will go back. Your health is precious. You are rich, respected, admired, beloved. You are happy as once I was. You are a man to be missed. For me, it is no matter. We will go back. You will be ill, and I cannot be responsible. Besides, there's Lucrezi.
Enough.
He said.
The cough's a mere nothing. It will not kill me. I shall not die of a cough.
True, true.
I replied.
And indeed, I had no intention of alarming you unnecessarily, but you should use all proper caution. A draught of this medic will defend us from the damps. Here
Right,
sorry.
It's okay. So there's a few moments in here I would like to bring up. First of all, Montressor says, "You are happy as once I was." So reminded, Fortunado ruined Montressor's life. We don't know how, but we know that he once was happy, now he's not, and he's blaming Fortunado for that. There's obviously some more dramatic irony. Indeed, Fortunado will not die of a cough. And pretty much every line that Montressor says is with this like knowledge that he's going to kill him. He's like getting off on this a little bit, like a Disney villain. He's like, "Oh yes, you surely will not die of a cough," you know.
You also
He's really
feel
enjoying it.
he's sort of like absolving himself of responsibility, like because this is the second time he's been like, no, don't go with me. It's like, and then he says, "I cannot be responsible." So it's, I know he's like being like using reverse psychology, but it's just interesting.
Yeah, he has a lot of trust in his reverse psychology powers because he does this quite a bit where he's like, go back, you shouldn't come with me. And he just really trusts that Fortunato is not going to listen to him, which I guess points to Fortunato as a person and how well Montressor knows him. Here I knocked off the neck of a bottle, which I drew from a long row of its fellows that lay upon the mold.
Drink!
I said, presenting him the wine. He raised it to his lips with a leer. He paused and nodded to me familiarly while his bells jingled.
I drink,
He said,
to the buried that repose around us.
And I to your long life.
He again took my arm, and we proceeded.
These vaults
He said,
are extensive.
The Montressors
I replied.
were a great and numerous family.
I forgot your arms.
A huge human futor in a field of azure. The foot crushes a serpent rampant whose fangs are embedded in the heel.
And the motto?
Nemo impune lecessit.
Good.
He said. All right, we'll pause here again.
Oh, no one promotes with impunity.
Right. So, again, he says the Montressors were a great and numerous family. So it's implied that Fortunato didn't just ruin Montressor's life, but his whole family, which are great and numerous. Who knows what he did, but big deal. So then they talk about his coat of arms, which is when I would normally do a symbolism lesson, and then have the kids make their own coat of arms using symbolism from England. But
That sounds like fun.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. But we're not going to do that now. So it's a huge human foot door, which means gold. So it's like a golden foot crushing down on a snake, which is coming up and then biting the ankle. So it's like revenge, basically. And then the Latin motto, no one provokes me with impunity, so no one provokes me without punishment. So that's more foreshadowing there.
Mm-hmm.
That was also
biblical reference.
Biblical reference to what?
There's scripture that talks about like the serpent when he gets cursed in the Garden of Eden. God curses him and says like he, meaning like man will crush your head and you will bite his heel. So it's like the same thing. I guess like, I don't know, foreshadowing like maybe Jesus crushing Satan or something, but Satan also, I don't know, good versus evil, revenge, like both sides are hurt in the end, but it's from the Bible.
Yeah. That totally makes sense. I think in this, it would make more sense for Montressor to like relate to the snake, because the snake is the one who's getting back and getting revenge, so he's relating to like the devil, right? So that's cool.
Yeah.
Poe at this moment was using a literary technique that every detail is important, which is something that I would subscribe to. So like nothing mentioned is frivolous. Everything has a purpose. So it's only like 5 pages long, but the story is so dense, like we can stop every 2 seconds if we wanted to and discuss what's going on. But we will not keep doing that. So, coat of arms, fantastic, good. The wine sparkled in his eyes and the bells jingled. My own fancy grew warm with the Medoc. We had passed through walls of piled bones with casks and puncheons, which are like little posts to keep the walls up, basically, intermingling into the inmost recesses of the catacombs. So there's wine intermixed in with bones, like in the walls. That's what the walls look like. I paused again, and this time I made bold to seize Fortunado by an arm above the elbow.
The niter,
I said.
See, it increases. It hangs like moss upon the walls. We are below the river's bed. The drops of moisture trickle among the bones. Come, we will go back ere it is too late. Your cough.
It is nothing,
he said.
Let us go on. But first, another draught of the Medoc.
I broke and reached him a flagon of de Grave. He emptied it at a breath. His eyes flashed with a fierce light. He laughed and threw the bottle upward with a gesticulation I did not understand. I looked at him in surprise. He repeated the movement, a grotesque one.
You do not comprehend?
He said.
Not I.
I replied.
Then you are not of the Brotherhood.
Oh.
You are not of the Masons.
Yes, yes.
I said.
Yes, yes.
You? Impossible, a Mason.
A Mason.
I replied.
A sign.
He said.
A sign.
It is this.
I answered, producing a trowel from beneath the folds of my roquelaire.
You jest.
He exclaimed, recoiling a few paces.
But let us proceed to the Amontillado.
Be it so.
I said, replacing the tool beneath the cloak and again offering him my arm. Much like Shakespeare, Poe sometimes cannot resist the easy pun. So Fortunato asks if he's a part of the Masons, like the Freemasons, like the society. Fortunato is, and he has this like sign, like a hand signal to show that. And then Montressor is like, I am a Mason, and pulls out a trowel, which is what Masons, like bricklayers, use to lay bricks. Why does he have that right now? Who knows? Let's find out. Okay. He leaned upon my arm heavily. We continued our route in search of the Amontillado. We passed through a range of low arches, descended, passed on, and descending again, arrived at a deep crypt in which the foulness of the air caused our flambeaux rather to glow than flame.
Oh, wow.
So their torches, there's not enough oxygen, really, and it's damp, and so they're not really fire, they're more just like embers. At the most remote end of the crypt, there appeared another, less spacious. Its walls had been lined with human remains, piled to the vaults overhead, in the fashion of the great catacombs of Paris. 3 sides of this interior crypt were still ornamented in this manner. From the 4th, the bones had been thrown down and lay promiscuously upon the earth, forming at one point a mound of some size. Weird. Within the wall, thus exposed by the displacing of the bones, we perceived a still interior recess in depth about 4 feet, in width 3, in height 6 or 7. It seems to have been constructed for no especial use in itself, but formed merely by the interval between 2 of the colossal supports of the roof of the catacombs, and was backed by one of their circumscribing walls of solid granite. Okay, so it's like there's a little room, and 3 of the walls are made of bones, and then in that room, in the back wall, there's like a closet that goes into the wall, and that's even smaller. And the back wall,
the coat hanging place.
yeah, and the back wall is solid granite. So it's like room, bones, closet, granite. It's like 2 things. It was in vain that Fortunado, uplifting his dull torch, endeavored to pry into the depths of the recess. Its termination, the feeble light, did not enable us to see.
Proceed.
I said.
Here is the Amontillado. As for the crazy.
He is an ignoramus.
Interrupted my friend. As he stepped unsteadily forward, while I followed immediately at his heels. In an instant he had reached the extremity of the niche, and finding his progress arrested by the rock, stood stupidly bewildered. A moment more, and I had fettered him to the granite. In its surface were 2 iron staples, distant from each other about 2 feet horizontally. From one of these depended a short chain, from the other a padlock. Throwing the links about his waist, it was but the work of a few seconds to secure it. He was too much astounded to resist. Withdrawing the key, I stepped back from the recess.
Pass your hands.
I said.
Over the wall. You cannot help feel the niter. Indeed, it is very damp. Once more, let me implore you to return. No? Then I must positively leave you. But I must first render you all the little attentions in my power.
The Amontillado!
Ejaculated my friend, not yet recovered from his astonishment.
True.
I replied.
The Amontillado.
Right, so, as we can see in this little drawing, he is now chained to the wall. Yeah. Montressor, by giving Fortunado literally bottles of wine as they walked, and Fortunado just drinking them like nobody's business. He's quite drunk. He was just searching for this like Amontillado as Montressor was chaining him to the wall, and he didn't even really notice. So he's stuck now. And he's still asking for the Amontillado. So now we're going to see how Montressor has planned this ahead of time. What he's done is like put some tools here ahead of time before the story even started to do what he's going to do. So,
spoilers.
As I said these words, I busied myself among the pile of bones of which I had before spoken. Throwing them aside, I soon uncovered a quantity of building stone and mortar. With these materials and with the aid of my trowel, I began vigorously to wall up the entrance of the niche. So these things weren't just there, he brought them down ahead of time. So he had this very much planned. I had scarcely laid the first tier of my masonry when I discovered that the intoxication of Fortunado had, in a great measure, worn off. The earliest indication I had of this was a low, moaning cry from the depth of the recess. It was not the cry of a drunken man. There was then a long and obstinate silence. I laid the second tier, and the third, and the fourth, and then I heard the furious vibrations of the chain. The noise lasted for several minutes, during which, that I might hearken to it with the more satisfaction, I ceased my labors and sat down upon the bones. So he just sits and listens as Fortunado tries desperately to break out of the chains. He just waits it out, and eventually Fortunado gets tired of that, exhausted physically. And when at last the clanking subsided, I resumed the trowel and finished without interruption the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th tier. This takes a while. I'm not a mason, but you can't just do this quickly. Like, it takes hours, most likely, for this all to happen. He's just one brick after the other, letting them dry, and then doing the next one. It's wild. So this takes a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The wall was now nearly upon a level with my breast. I again paused, and holding the flambeau over the mason work, threw a few feeble rays upon the figure within. A succession of loud and shrill screams bursting suddenly from the throat of the chained form seemed to thrust me violently back. For a brief moment I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope about with it in the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall. I replied to the yells of him who clamored. I re-echoed, I aided. I surpassed them in volume and in strength. I did this, and the clamorer grew still. So Fortunado's screaming, and Montressor just screams right back at him. Well, why do you think he would do that?
If anybody overhears, you can just pretend like it was him. Like, I was just screaming in my catacombs. I was drunk. I felt bones.
Yeah, it's just two guys or one guy by themselves yelling in the basement, having a good time.
You know,
Having a good time.
I kind of think of like talking to animals, like if they like meow or bark or something, and sometimes like really do it back. But I don't know, because this is more like premeditated almost.
it kind of reminds me of In the Silence of the Lambs when the lady is screaming in the well and he just like screams right back.
Almost like a mocking, right? Like, yeah.
Why does he feel comfortable enough to mock him?
There's like no way out now. I mean,
It truly, and there's also, I think it also feeds into his arrogance as a character. Like, we've already talked about them multiple times. He's openly said like, "Oh no, you should go," and it's like one, that amount of confidence, and then I think there's a level of arrogance to willingly putting his plan so close to, because like Fortunato could easily have been like, "Yeah, I'll leave, sure, whatever."
Yeah, honestly, okay, whatever.
Himself, and he's that arrogant to use reverse psychology that could backfire like that. I think really would feed into why he would do something like this.
Yeah. I think you're right. Like he takes these risks for his own satisfaction because he finds fun in like challenging himself almost. And I think that in this, like if they could hear Fortunato screaming, which maybe they can't, and he's just kind of like nailing that in. But if they could hear Fortunato screaming, he is so sure that his servants aren't home. He is so sure that this isn't going to do anything. He's just amplifying his noise and making fun of him at the same time. And it is like this arrogance that his plan is just so perfect, nothing could ever ruin it. It is now midnight, and my task was drawing to a close. I had completed the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th tier. I had finished a portion of the last and the 11th, and there remained but a single stone to be fitted and plastered in. I struggled with its weight. I placed it partially in its destined position, but now there came out from the niche a low laugh that erected the hairs upon my head. It was succeeded by a sad voice, which I had difficulty in recognizing as that of the noble Fortunato. The voice said,
A very good joke indeed. An excellent jest. We will have many a rich laugh about it at the palazzo. Over our wine.
The Amontillado.
I said,
Yes, the Amontillado. But is it not getting late? Will not they be awaiting us at the palazzo, the Lady Fortunato and the rest? Let us be gone.
Yes,
I said,
let us be gone.
For the love of God, Montressor.
Yes,
I said.
for the love of God.
But to these words I hearkened in vain for a reply. I grew impatient. I called aloud.
Fortunato!
No answer. I called again.
Fortunato!
No answer still. I thrust a torch through the remaining aperture and let it fall within. There came forth in return only a jingling of the bells. So you may know this, in coffins they used to put bells so that if someone were buried alive, which used to be a very common thing, they could ring a bell and then the people at the graveyard could walk around and unbury them. So there's these bells because Fortunado has been buried alive and he's ringing them, but no one is close enough to hear them. At least no one who's going to save him. So that is like almost an Easter egg to us, but that would have been like super obvious to readers of the time because that's when the death bells were still like being implemented into graveyards. So that's a cool note. So jingling of the bells. My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs. I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Against the new masonry, I re-erected the old rampart of bones. For the half of a century, no mortal has disturbed them. In Pace Sant, which means rest in peace. So it's revealed at the end that this is being told to us 50 years after it has happened. And he just got away with it.
Yeah, clearly.
Is this like a deathbed confession?
You get that vibe. It sounds like he's, because at the start he said, "You who know the nature of my soul." It sounds like he's presenting this in front of a priest so he can get absolution before he dies.
Oh, that's a great setting for that.
Right.
That's a wow.
But does he feel like remorseful though at all?
No.
Well, the weird thing is like, yeah, I don't know. Like he doesn't, the way he's telling the story right now, he almost has a bit of reservation towards the end of what he has done, especially when he starts calling out for him. Like,
yeah, why does he do that thing with a torch? Is he offering him some light just as like a final, like, courtesy? Is he just getting rid of it as evidence? Like,
What do you think?
I think he likes the act of getting revenge more than he likes the fact of having been revenged. Like, once Fortunado stops playing along, he's like, oh, this sucks now.
yeah, right. Like, it's not a game anymore. It's like he's not, which would feed into what we're talking about with how much he loves manipulating people, and like that part's over.
Yeah.
yeah.
Also, he's less drunk. Everybody's less drunk now.
No, I'm sorry, this is boring.
Killing people just gets sad if you're not drunk.
Yeah,
That's just true. That's just true.
it's just a simple rule. You gotta,
There's a line that I wanted to bring up there. It says, "My heart grew sick on account of the dampness of the catacombs." And I can't tell if that's a reversal or a double reversal, in the way that, like, I don't know if you know how like sometimes when someone's really crying they'll be like, "Oh, someone's just chopping onions," and we know that that's not happening,
Right.
that they're just actually crying. So like, I don't know if he's saying that, where if he's like, "My heart grew sick but I was like actually growing sick," or if he's doing like, "My heart grew sick, just kidding, it's cause yeah, I was in the catacombs." Like, I can't tell.
loser. Because it's like you'd almost want to hope that he feels regret, but it could also just be like that psych sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think he's just like that. I just think he's crazy. Well, there is like there have been like studies and research that show that there's like a correlation between psychopathy and like sensation seeking, which is like the idea of like, I mean, it's like what it sounds like, just like going after this like feeling. And it's sort of like in the same vein of like Allison was talking about how he's like in the like he likes the idea better of revenge than like actually being revenged. So it just seemed like, and like the stuff like gets tied into that also, like they're just liars. They get off on the thrill of lying, like making people believe them. It's like a control thing. And that's just, I mean, that's him. I mean, he got this guy drunk enough to like change the thing and then start screaming at him because he starts screaming too. Like, it's just like a deal with it, bitch. You're trapped. Like,
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
it's, yeah. interesting. Like, he does confess, but he waits 50 years. It's hard to tell if he feels guilty or if he's bragging and he's like, no one ever found me out, but people have to know that I did this awesome thing. Like, he was an adult when he did this. So he's got to be like 70, 80 at the least. So he's going to die soon, ish. And he's like, hey, someone has to know that I did this awesome thing. So I don't know if he's like bragging about it or if, like Colin said, he's confessing. I don't know if confessing really fits the character though.
I do like, it feels like he's not necessarily sorry about it, but I can, on the other hand, imagine a person giving a confession, not really feeling sorry about it, but like using the act of confession as a way to get into heaven when he dies.
Or as a way to tell someone who can't say anything about it.
Yeah, it's also true.
True. So maybe he's been bragging to various priests around Italy.
So, check it out.
Kind of has
Every church.
vibe to me. Like, it just feels more like bragging than anything else. Like, there's no reason to believe that this character would feel remorse now.
He thinks he never threatened him. Technically, he was like, let's not go down there. No, let's not. And then Fortunado was like, please, let's go. Come on. Like,
yeah. And to tie it into the biblical reference you mentioned, and then Allison was talking about Sounds of the Lambs, which made me think of the Hannibal TV series, and that a lot of that manipulation comes from like the evil person makes the person become their undoing, which I think is very interesting, and that could be that could work mechanically as like Montressor absolving himself of the responsibility of doing it, or like as like that, getting off on that manipulation. I don't know. It's just interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because the serpents never like eat the apple or eat the fruit. He's like, surely you won't die if you eat it.
You'll not be wicked smart.
Literally, that's what he says. I'm trying to understand the first paragraph and like the setup of the story. He says, "You who know so well the nature of my soul will not suppose, however, that I gave utterance to a threat." Like, you know me so well. I never threatened the guy. At least that's what I'm getting from that. I don't really get the next few sentences, I think.
So instead of like going down to the bar and being like, Fortunato, you ruined my life, I'm gonna kill you, he like held back, was very nice to him, to his face, and at length, so like not right now, but in time, I knew I would be revenged. And so like, I think that's also like a bit of a brag. Like, I didn't do it the dumb way. I did the smart way. And look, it worked.
With finality, forever, with impunity.
Yes. Yeah.
So that it could never be undone and no consequences would fall on me. A wrong is unredressed when retribution overtakes its redresser. So Fortunato punches me, then I say, want to fight Fortunato, and then the cops come and arrest me. But if I get back at him in a way that's like killing him in the catacombs with no one to hear it for 50 years, then my retribution is not unredressed. Okay, thank you all. You gotta do revenge really well, which means that they gotta feel it, but you also don't get any consequences back from taking the revenge.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much what happened.
Yeah, which kind of runs counter to a lot of his other stories, right?
Certainly the Telltale Heart seems to imply that you would, like, the guilt would take effect, but it doesn't seem to here.
I was just picturing like alternate context for the story. Like, what if he was talking to somebody else and he's about to murder? Or like, what if he's talking to like an heir and he's like, okay, now it's your job to do the murder, and this time, here's how I murdered when I was your age.
Far-fetched, I like it.
There have been things brought up that I've seen that are like, the Montressor crest is all about revenge. And so if they don't have someone to take out revenge on, they're not being a real Montressor. And so he may have just made up this slight to have a way to live up to his name, kind of in the way that like Lieutenant Dan felt like he needed to die in a war, and so he like felt bad that he survived the war in Forrest Gump. In this way, he's like, I need to create this obstacle so that I can live up to my family.
In the catacombs, does he ever like truly say who they are? All the bones?
They're just his family.
Oh,
I mean, supposedly.
I know we're missing all that cataloging from the Iliad, where like,
Yeah.
And these bones belonged to Giorgio Montressor, who died only a child.
Yes. Oh.
Where's Nestor when you need him? You know.
That's the it's kind of like Fortunado's like a wine snob who chases his like, what do you call those? His hedonistic things. While this guy's like, well, how about I mason you up the true Mason way? And he just masons him up, slaps him some masonry.
Mason you up? True.
And then also, that's right then, because then that's another aspect of his life that relates to his undoing. Like you're absolutely right. Like it's almost like each component of who he is becomes his undoing.
Right? Because like you're a fake wine snob, you're a fake Mason, and you're a fake Fortunado. So I'm gonna do everything against everything you are, or you think you are.
Yeah, I mean, I would buy that.
Having not been familiar with this story, I certainly, when the trowel came out, like thought it was just gonna be like a, I don't really know what that is, but I picture it having some kind of stick aspect.
Oh,
he's got like a big ass
triangle thing.
It's one of those little boys. It's one of those little boys.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Well, first I was definitely getting like imagery of like with the like cloak, like the image of death situation. I was like, oh, it's like a Grim Reaper staff.
Oh.
And then I thought it was going to be used as the murder weapon, like more directly. But I definitely did not expect like building a whole wall.
I mean, that'd be kind of wild, like, going through the catacombs and there's a scythe. You're like, okay, why is that?
But I also got this, like, because of all of that, like the timing of this is so slow, like you were saying, Christina. Like all these individual layers were being built, and then it kind of, like the very last part seems almost rushed when the narrator is like, I grew impatient because I didn't hear a response, and then like throws the torch in, and then is like just the jingling the bells, and then my heart grew sick, and then I hastened to make an end of my labor. I forced the last stone into its position. I plastered it up. Like feels a lot faster than everything up to that moment. I don't know.
There's a sense of like savoring it over time.
Yeah, like definitely talking about like that. He's enjoying the play of doing this experience, like Rob was saying as well. Like, and then once the sensation starts to end, I think that would definitely fit like your idea of him rushing toward the end. It's like, he just doesn't want to play anymore.
So one thing that I want to ask you guys is, well, so the two stories that we've read so far are in the killer's point of view. Most horror that exists is in the victim's point of view. Like if you think horror movies, we're usually following the good guys who get chased by the villains. So there's no right answer to this, but like, why do you think he chooses to do this? And then do you think it would be more effective if we saw this in Fortunato's point of view?
I disagree. I mean, not disagree as in like, I think this plays stronger because you actually see the murder. Otherwise, it would have been like, I was woobling in my room, I wanted some wine, and then, oh no, the wall's closing, what's happening? Like, it would just gotta be like a goofy thing. While this way, you see how calculated these murders are, and you can, I find, actually, as we were reading, it's like, this is a terrible way to die, and you are powerless to do so, because the murderer is very intelligent, very skillful, very calculated. That really does put me in the shoes of someone that will die, and this could happen to me, kind of thing. So I find this more, what is the word? It feels more real when it's from the perspective of the murderer, just because you just see how well planned and how powerless the other person is. Otherwise, you're just like, oh, what's going on?
I agree, but I think from Fortunado's point of view, it'd be kind of it'd almost be like an M. Night twist in that like he's just like drunk and like thinking he's about to have a really good time with his friend, and then like he realizes, oh shit, I'm getting chained up. And then like hours pass and like he starts sobering up and like the wall's going up and like he knows he's about to fucking die. And like, I don't know, I think that would be really terrifying. Like it'd be such a brutal tone shift, and I don't know, really... like there could be a serious sense of dread there.
It's in the public domain, do it, write it.
That's an assignment that I gave to my kids when I taught this, was to rewrite a scene from Fortunado's point of view. Either like when they first meet at the carnival, or when he's like getting walked down to the thing, or to write a sequel or a prequel from Montressor's point of view, to see either what Fortunado did to him that was so bad, or to see Montressor like visit his bones later, see what happens, or like his guilt getting the better of him, like in Telltale Heart. I think like part of the genius of the story is there's so much unsaid, and I think that's what Poe is so good at. There's so much. I mean, yeah, public domain. I think they should get at it. I can't believe there's not like a film version of this, actually.
I feel like once again, like having that room for speculation makes it easier to put yourself in the shoes of the protagonist.
It's almost like, oh, have I been a Fortunado before?
Or a Montressor.
Yeah.
Also, you get to see the creepiness, like two elements of the creepiness. One being like you get to see the forethought of the murderer, like hiding all the tools underneath the bones, thinking about this at length beforehand. You see that in Telltale Heart and Cask. And you also see like in both Telltale Heart and this one, like at the beginning he says, it must be understood that neither by word nor deed had I given Fortunado cause to doubt my goodwill. Like, I put on a happy face for him and was like, want to go see my swimming pool full of delicious wine? Like, let's go have so much fun. And also in Telltale Heart, the narrator is like, you should have seen how wisely I proceeded. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. Like, this creepy sense of like, one, you're thinking about this all the time before you kill this person. Two, you're like treating them so well. Like murderers could be among us, treating us so nicely.
Yeah, and you totally miss out on that if it was in the victim's point of view. Because if you were in the victim's point of view, you wouldn't know that this guy has spent like weeks planning this arbitrary murder against you. You just get to see the end moment.
This took hours, and he like he wavered a couple times, but he was never like, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Stop building this giant wall that I've been building for hours and hours.
Right. Also, this man just literally watched cement dry and savored it. Like, this man is on something. At that point, like, neither of them were drunk either. So
yeah, it like goes beyond premeditated.
Yeah.
I'm, like, relishing this. I have an important fact about their costumes, which definitely Fortunato is like very clearly. Does this picture work? This is Pantalone and Arlecchino from Commedia dell'arte. You probably know about Commedia, right?
Of course, yeah.
So it's like classic Italian comedy from like Venetian, like the height of Venetian trading era, whatever. And Arlecchino is like the fool, but he basically just plays tricks on everybody and makes everybody else seem like an idiot. And he's like
Arlecchino is the original Harley Quinn.
Huh?
Arlecchino is the original Harley Quinn.
Yeah, he's the original Harley Quinn. And he's like also very successful with women, which like has led me to a theory about a possible slight that has been caused. But Pantalone is like old, and he's a merchant, and he's like very extremely wealthy and very invested in his money, and also has a extremely large but fragile ego, and is like gets very angry and upset about the slightest offense. But he's also like very unsuccessful with women. So I was wondering if like, because they talk a lot about Lady Fortunato, so I'm like, what if Fortunato stole Montressor's girlfriend or whatever?
Entirely possible.
It's a good idea. The costumes are definitely what they're wearing.
Yeah,
like the black mask and the cape, and
that's like a really good connection.
Yeah.
So in this comparison, Fortunado is the one that has the jester-like costume, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's just like out there, just like playing tricks on everybody. Thinks everybody's in on the joke, and it's like, ha ha ha! This is so funny. Like, I'm so magnanimous, and everybody loves hanging out with me. And Montressor is like, no, I won't love it. It was a funny joke.
He says that like his insult is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Like, he did 1,000 things to me, but when he ventured upon insult, I vowed revenge. Like.
But it does sound like Fortunato was just out here playing tricks, like just playing practical jokes all the time, and Montressor was not about it, but like didn't communicate that like a normal person, and instead was just holding a grudge.
Imagine like you just like threw a tomato at him or something in Carnival, and he's like, "You will never slight me again." And like that's why it's just like he got a crowd to laugh at him, and that's murder time.
It feels like if Squidward just cracked one day and like murdered SpongeBob in cold blood. Edgar Allan Poe more or less invented detective fiction. Sherlock Holmes was based on his character called I just pulled it up. C. August Dupin was the detective that Poe invented, and I wonder if it is. Because point of view is really important in this, like we've been talking about, like being the murderer's point of view. So when you're writing detective fiction, when you're writing a mystery, pretty much you write two stories and you put them into one. Like you write what happens at the murder or crime scene, and then you write finding out about it. So maybe that's how they could do the movie. Like it would be really neat if somehow they discovered Fortunato's tomb, and they were like, oh wow, like this guy, we can tell somehow with the bones that he like asphyxiated here as opposed to like getting killed and then buried, and like also why is he chained to the wall, and then kind of like unwrapping it piece by piece what must have happened.
That'd be really
like
cool,
a detective movie.
There's one quote that I really liked at the end of the 4th paragraph. Where did it go? That was like, observe the white webwork which looms from these cavern walls, and he's basically like, look at my spider web, you are my fly.
Oh, that's cool. Oh, that's nice.
Line.
I was just gonna ask about when Fortunato screams, like the time that he scares Montressor. It says like it thrust me violently back. For a brief moment, I hesitated. I trembled. Unsheathing my rapier, I began to grope with it about the recess, but the thought of an instant reassured me. I placed my hand upon the solid fabric of the catacombs and felt satisfied. I reapproached the wall, and then that's when he screams back at him, like a lunatic. And so I'm just wondering, what do you guys think was going through his head when he like grabs his sword? Like, was he going to like kill? Like, was he just scared and trying to defend himself? Was he going to kill him with the sword instead, just to make sure he didn't escape? Or
I think so.
I think both of those are good thoughts. Because yeah, it could be an instinctual like, oh, he's gonna lurch at me. I didn't expect him to scream, and just like that instinctual before he like gets his bearings and is like, oh, he's tied to the wall, idiot, and then screams.
I wonder also if he was like worried that people might hear him even after it's walled up, and then he feels the wall and he's like, no, it's solid, nobody's gonna hear the wall after it's done.
That's also true.
with the bones, like him touching the fabric of the catacombs, I kind of imagined him being like, no, my ancestral purpose is revenge. Let's go, boys. Like,
let's go, boys.
let's finish this the right way. So the fact that he had a sword with him the entire time, because a rapier is the sword, right?
Yeah,
So,
He could have like poked him. He could have been like
he
poked him
could have
back.
killed him like immediately, but he chose to do this brick by brick.
Because he wanted him to feel how he felt when Fortunato slighted him. Like, if he stabbed him, he would die too quickly. He needed to feel that pain for a long time, like for him to be satisfied.
Back from the intro, nice.
But then Fortunato's dead, so it doesn't matter because he doesn't remember it anymore. Like, the memory of his suffering is gone as soon as he's dead. If he could just, like, snap his fingers and a wall suddenly would appear and it was exactly the same for Fortunato, I don't think he would have been happy about it. Like, I think he needed to build it brick by brick for him to be satisfied.
I'm still on that absolving thing, because at the beginning he's like, you know the nature of my soul. So I'm wondering if there is still this reassurance where it's like stabbing someone is very different than like, they're both like burying someone in a wall is very messed up, but there's something so visceral I can imagine about like stabbing someone rather than just like putting them away and just like never having to worry about them again.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have to see him die.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe he's like a revenge demon and he's reporting back to his boss saying, and he's like, you know me, I got this. Check out this sick, hot revenge that I did.
Oh, Satan, you know my soul so well. Check it out.
Check out this spicy revenge.
Spicy revenge.
He's like spilling the tea about it. He's like,
he's been talking about it ever since.
you know me?
Yeah, you know me. Y'all want to hear the story again? All right, let me tell you the story.
Yeah, he's like drinking in a pub and he's like, hey, remember that time I murdered that guy?
Remember that heartless and murdered that guy? It's like, dude, stop telling the story. The story.
Jesus, Montressor, please stop. We don't want to hear this anymore. Like, it's horrifying.
You're creepy and weird and old. Go home.
So funny. I'm kidding. All the folks in these short stories, the narrators, who've told their heart, Cask of Amontillado, all the other ones, just swapping like sicko stories.
Oh, they're all just chilling and talking about it.
Like Psychopaths Anonymous.
Yeah.
It almost makes me think that you guys are right about the, what do you call that, the stolen Miss Fortunado whatever thing. It's as if like, what is this, Montressor boy, he was in love with the woman and he thought the woman loved him, but she never loved him and he chased after the woman and got nothing, while Fortunado just swooped her right away.
The Chad Fortunado.
Yeah, with very like commedia style.
Right.
Clearly it's not anything that big, because otherwise Fortunato would be like, oh, I screwed this guy over, like he doesn't like me, he's not going to give me free wine.
Yeah.
Right. I feel like more than Fortunato stealing Montressor's girlfriend, I would say it's more like Fortunato getting with a woman that Montressor like secretly had a thing for, you know?
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah, it's like Snape being angry at James Potter because he had a crush on Lily. Like, don't have any right to a woman. That's a whole other podcast.
But like the last line, rest in peace, is also kind of like a fun irony thing. Like, no one's found him in 50 years. Rest in peace. Like,
this might be boring, but I'm going to say it anyway. So Poe was writing in an era called Romantic. Specifically, he was writing in Gothic Romantic. The point of the Romantic movement was to feel the sublime. So kind of like what Rob was saying earlier about chasing the sensations. That was like the point of this movement in art. And so nothing had like the point wasn't a lesson. Yeah, it wasn't to teach you anything. It wasn't to do anything outside of the art. It was art for art's sake. It's just like to enjoy the art and feel the feelings of the art. And this is where like Wordsworth poetry comes in, where he just like describes the Grand Canyon for like 10 years or something. And he's just like, it's so beautiful. Like, it's so amazing. But the thing is, like, that's all that it was. It's like, I want to make you feel emotions with my art. And I think he succeeded. But it's funny because like when we think of things today, we kind of think of like underlying themes and lessons and what's this story trying to tell you. I don't know what this story is supposed to teach you beyond like revenge sometimes works. It's not the best lesson.
I feel like it's just really just this, check out this guy. He was crazy.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting, and it's like that's what the whole thing was about. Like, everyone was wanting that sort of writing. They're like, yeah, I don't care about lessons, just give me some feelings.
There's a parallel, because it kind of feels like Montressor is just trying to do revenge as revengey as possible. Like he's trying to have the like quintessential emotional ideal of revenge. He's, like thought about like just like Poe kind of thought about all of the little details and how they would work together. Montressor like had everything planned out, and he had like all of the different elements of Fortunato's personality that he was going to take advantage of, and like all of his own like gifts and specialties that he was like, here's how it's all going to work together and it's going to be beautiful and let me tell everybody about it. It's like he was painting a picture, but the picture was murder.
But it was like the time periods, like there was beauty in death and everything was quite macabre. Like they loved death. They were all about it. It was super cool. Like the Gothic movement.
Jimmy died? Sick.
Like they were getting a lot of sublime, emotional, romantic writing about like romance and love and beauty, and this was just like the next natural step. It was like, you know what's also beautiful? Murder. Let me show you.
Oh man.
Wasn't this based on something that actually happened in the Boston Harbor Islands?
Why did you put it in Italy? Why didn't you just write the story about that one?
Yeah, right.
Pretty sure he put it in Italy so that they could have the catacombs, which was just like an image that he liked.
There'd be no other excuse for having an enormous long basement.
I can't find it, but I basically gave them like something like this that I'm sending in the chat. And then we read it about all the different symbols that were on like an English coat of arms. And then we had them design their own coat of arms with like their last name. They'd make up a motto and then we translate it into Latin, which is always fun. And then they'd pick like their colors that like suit them or their family if they wanted to do it for the whole family. And then like different symbols that would apply to them. So like, you know, a bear for bravery or whatever it was. And then colors that fit with them. So it was all very symbolic. And then that led into like the symbols lesson.
This is sick.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so you can make your own coat of arms if you like.
Let's do it.
Oh my god, the Gadsden flag I like reference and the thing I said about long basements made me think of like a modern take of like someone's like doomsday prep shelter being the setting.
Oh, that would be so good. Make a modern one.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, come down to my bomb shelter. I want to show you some cans of beans that I have.
Yeah.
He's like, oh,
PlayStation 5?
I just did a little research, and so apparently Edgar Allan Poe was stationed for a time at Fort Independence on Castle Island in Boston Harbor, where he heard the myth about the guy that like killed somebody in a duel, and then all the dead guy's friends got mad and got him drunk and walled him up in the fort.
Wow. So it was like a group effort.
Amazing.
Yeah, so basically like stole the idea.
Typical Poe. No originality. Doesn't know how to write.
Good writers borrow, great writers steal.
Are there really any
so
good
true.
ideas in the world? You know? Just like I've been to Castle Island and I've been in Fort Independence, and I remember like being on a tour and they were like, this was like the place where the guy got walled up in, except it wasn't actually true. It's cool to like be able to actually be in person in a place related to like story that people read all around the world.
I was thinking that I went to the French catacombs and I was thinking about this like the whole time and how spooky it was. And like it was spooky. I forgot to mention that as we got deeper down, there was less wine and more bones. Whatever. I'll mention that earlier when I edited.
I'll mention that earlier. I like that.
Would you want to be a bone chandelier?
No.
Kind of. Yeah. I'm not using them. If I'm not using my bones anymore.
I mean, it's like you're not using your bones, but like there could be a happy slug who wants to use your bones for nutriment.
Slugs don't want my bones. There's no
I
nutrient.
don't know what slugs want. I remember being like in like dark, spooky tunnels situation in Europe, but I don't remember bones like making up the walls or anything.
I think that only happens in the Paris ones because there's like we went to one in Rome, Colin and I did, and it was just like a spooky tunnel. There weren't like bones in the walls. So I think that Poe probably heard about that, combined it with the thing that happened to the soldier that Allison brought up, and was just like, let's put it in Italy. That's probably for the same reason Shakespeare used Italy, because Italians are like emotional and act irrationally.
That's another thing, the stereotype of the feuding Italians and the feuding like merchant families. Like,
I think it really like hammers in the Harlequin angle too. The character, like the commedia character traits, kind of mirror the actual characters in the story perfectly.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely on purpose.
I tried giving myself a Bone Church background, but instead it made my face the Bone Church.
Ooh.
Oh no.
Spooky.
Can you imagine having like, oh yeah, oh,
Whoa! He's got the Bone Church behind her.
No.
Everyone's at Bone Church.
you are the Bone Church.
That's awesome. You are the Bone Church.
Your space.
This looks like a TikTok filter.
Dude, that's badass. That looks cool.
I'm very scared of you.
This is my music video. I love the rainbow's still here though in space.
Space rainbow.
can you imagine being like, oh yeah, I have this family heirloom from my grandma. It's like this chandelier. It is my grandma.
I don't. Yeah, that's a lot. That'd probably be a big red flag for me. What if this isn't even his house?
He's like a fake Montressor. He's just like borrowing this guy's creepy family crypt to kill someone.
Yeah. Got it. I don't know how to change the backgrounds.
It was a process.
Oh.
So spooky. Oh wow.
Oh, what are we gonna read next?
That's a good question. What do you want to read next?
I think the Mask of the Red Death would be fun, or the Pit and the Pendulum's kind of boring.
Oh, Christine, you're so.
What about one of like the Dupe? What about? No!
The skulls look like your
figure
teeth.
this out.
Or like one of his.
Why is this messing up so much?
We all can't have a clean background like me.
I'm not allowed to be Bones.
No bone boy.
The strip with your eyes are is so stressful.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No. All right.
Oh, it's the planet. Is that planet Earth?
I'm planet Earth, yes. I am the same screw.
I'm planet Earth, yes.
Okay, so stories we can do next. We can do The Mask of the Red Death, which is about a plague. We can all relate to that. We could do poetry, like The Raven and Belle. We could do The Gold Bug. We could do Pit and the Pendulum. We could do anything else anyone else wants to do.
Be one of his doopy boopy stories, mystery boy.
Doopy boopy?
Like one of his mysteries, the Dupin guy.
I definitely think a plague one would be fascinating. Even in this story, when they're like, "Oh, you're coughing,"
Yeah, just like,
topical. Because then they're like, "Oh, that won't kill me," and I was like, "Could be a sign."
yeah, I would also like to do Mask of Red Death, I think.
Okay. So we'll do Mask of the Red Death. Comment below if you want your bones to be a chandelier.
Yes.
We'd love to find out.
I guess Colin doesn't need to comment now.
What kind of art?
No, I was very opposed to bone chandelier, but I'm very excited to find out whether our followers want to be bone chandeliers.
Or any other kind of bone art, really.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you want your bones to do?
The bag made of children's.
What would you do with a bone chandelier if you inherited it?
Oh.
I want to swing from the bone chandelier.
I wouldn't put it past Thea, honestly. These are
Ah.
What?
I don't know what Marat's background is, but I'm here for it.
Did you say Scrappy Doo as a lobster?
Yeah, dude. You know it.
It's Scrappy Doo. You're right, Phoebe.
Scrappy Doo. Lobster boys. Oh, this is
The
cool.
more vile of the Doos.